The Mendenhall Glacier is the most popular visitor attraction in southeast Alaska. Each year, thousands of people come to this glacier, and among many of them, there seems to be a common ailment, and that's the need to take a picture of this scene. Hello, I'm Scott Foster, and welcome to Rain Country. Most of us can learn how to use a camera and take pictures that are perfectly adequate for our personal needs. But some people take pictures of these kind of scenes and make a living at it. One of those is Nancy Simmerman. Her home is in Girdwood, near Anchorage. But she has spent a year and a half living in and traveling in southeast Alaska. She was taking pictures for a large format book about our corner of the world. And in that time, she took more photographs than most of us will ever take in a lifetime.
Over the last year and a half, I have kept 22,000 images of the ones that I've taken. So it's a big job.
And how many will make it in the book?
130. But it's gonna. I hope it's going to be the very best of the 100 of the 22,000 too. This whole last summer, and particularly these last few months, I've known exactly what I needed to complete what I feel is a portrait of Southeast. And this includes, you know, the beautiful days that we have, this wonderful soft lighting on rainy days. I mean, it's pouring out there, but it's lovely. And I love the way, particularly here in Juneau, the way the fog roars up the mountains, almost like it's coming from the trees. The forest is on fire. And the sunsets, the way they happen with the reflections on the water. And then the way the people react to this. Plus the fact that in Southeast, everywhere you turn, you see fish images.
Trying to show Southeast in photographs was a year-and-a-half commitment for Nancy Simmerman. And although based out of Juneau, she was constantly on the go.
But for instance, I left Juneau in the middle of May, after trips all spring, to go over to Little Norway Festival in Petersburg, and then after that I think I went to Cake, and then I went back to Petersburg because the vegetation had changed, and then I went down to Wrangell, I think, and then back to Petersburg, and then on up to Sitka for the Summer Music Festival, and then down to Ketchikan, and I'm just constantly moving around because of either this type of flower is now blooming or an event is happening, which I think is an important part of Southeast that shows something of the quality of life in Southeast.
Although traveling throughout Southeast taking pictures for a book may seem a perfect life to many, there's actually a surprising amount of hard work involved.
But for instance, I've been down here in Southeast now for a year and a half working on a book, which has involved a year and a half solid of travel, living in my VW van. I haven't returned home in all that time, and it's, you might say, 25 hours a day of photography or photography-oriented activities.
All the work, all the travel, and all the 22,000 photos taken were for one goal: to end up with 130 pictures that show Southeast. As with any photographer, Nancy Simmerman brings her own style to these photos. And using examples from one of her previously published books, she describes some of the techniques she uses that might also be used by amateur photographers trying to improve their own photos of Southeast.
Well, typical of the way I work, I try to lead people into the photo visually. I want to control their eye movements. In this case, these lines of the logs take the eye right into the ship. The nice part about this particular picture is that it's not driftwood, it's not seaweed, it's actually logs that are taking your eye in, so that this gives you some more information about the Wrangell sawmill. I think that's fairly typical of a compositional method. Now here with the glacier ice, this is Riggs Glacier at Glacier Bay. And rather than stand out here at the water and take a picture of the glacier, I wanted to give the viewer an experience of what the ice would be, the texture if possible. I wanted the viewer to feel like she could pick it up and feel it. So with my 24mm lens, I came in very closely. I kneeled down, shot the ice in the foreground, and then made sure that this would be in sharp focus. If you're on the ferry and you see something that you very much like in terms of scenery, most people will go to the railing and take the picture. Well, you know, when you're on a ferry or on a boat, you don't have anything interesting in the foreground, but you have this mountain off in the distance and the water, and maybe a barge or something going by. But if the photographer were to back up and get pictures of people at the railing of the ferry photographing the barge and the scenery, then you have a picture with a depth of field, or depth of interest, you might say. It puts the mountains more in perspective as to why they're being photographed. Yeah, of course we had to have the Mendenhall Glacier in the book, and I did want something different. And that's a tall order for something that's been photographed as much as the Mendenhall. Plus, in my photos, I like to get an extra piece of information that shows somehow how people experience this area. And I managed to do it by going over to Douglas Island and waiting until the jets would take off. And I waited through all the takeoffs on one particular day. And so here's the Alaska Airlines jet right up here. Now, my other photos, in some cases the plane's path led right along here, or I shot too soon. This is the one that really worked well, where the jet had just cleared the skyline of the ridge.
Sometimes during her year and a half of photographing Southeast, Nancy Simmerman ran into special problems. For example, she felt the state capitol needed to be in the book, but because it's tucked so close to other buildings, she had trouble both shooting it from a good location and with a good mood.
Start off with a fairly mundane shot where I'm standing at the state office building looking down the street. And I try that with a horizontal and then a vertical, and it's better in the vertical than the horizontal. And then I go over and I play with the bell that sits on the lawn on the right-hand side of the building. And that's okay. This is a sunny day, and it's a nice picture, but they really come out as brochure pictures, and I've tried quite a number of angles here. After all the sunshine, which really wasn't so typical of Juneau, I came back in a massive rainstorm and asked Bruce if I could photograph him at his Nimbusburger stand. And I have some things that are there that I think give more of the feel of Juneau as it really is. And to me, that's more important for this book than a brochure-type picture.
So, through the seasons and the changing weather, Nancy Simmerman traveled southeast taking pictures for a large format book, similar in layout to one she's already completed about the whole state.
This is Alaska 2, and the publisher was pleased with the book and felt that we should do a regional book on Alaska. And wandering through the bookstores, it was obvious that one of the most beautiful sections of our state doesn't even have a quality book out on it. If a Southeasterner can pick up the book and say, that's what it feels to live in Southeast, I will have succeeded.